Hey guys, just going to do a little video on recapping a chassis. I've been wanting to do this video for a little while. I might do a couple of them on different chassis, just for reference. But I'll have to see how we go. Okay, now first thing, there are a few pitfalls to come across when recapping a chassis. I recommend with all electronics, and I probably haven't said this very much throughout all my videos, is get an earthing strap, anti-static earth strap, and then possibly, if you've got enough money, get one of the mats as well, and then you can have a really good anti-static workspace. That's why these mats are the odd bright blue, because they're made by 3M. There's lots of different companies that make them, but 3M they make it really good. It's really high heat tolerance, so it's good for soldering on. Not that I would solder directly to the mat, but it's got a good heat resistance, so that's really good. The next thing is most caps on a chassis, they will mark the negative side of the cap, which I'll soon show you, but this isn't always true. They don't always do that, so that's a little pitfall to fall into. So before you take a cap off, you should try and check, if you can, if there's enough space, where the actual negative or the positive side is. That way when you put the cap back in, the replacement, it's on the right side. Now, for removing caps, you can use a lot of different things. Chassis are good because they're only a single-sided board, so you only have to remove the solder on one side. Now you can use braid. Braid's good old solder wick, which I recommend. Who's it? The Chemtronics? Yeah, Chemtronics. It's from the USA. It comes in a tin like this. I use size 4, 80/4/5, SW18045. So that's the stuff I use. And it comes in a little canister that's sealed, air sealed, so that the braid doesn't oxidize. Good stuff. I've always used this brand. I've used other brands like Way in the past, and they're just not as good. So I use this one, and it's good stuff. So yeah, always keep one of those, because you get what is it? Is it 5 bobbins or 10 bobbins? 10. There's 10 in a case. Yeah, so that'll one of these should last you about a year or so. Depending on how much desoldering you're doing. So that's wick. You can use wick. Wick's not a problem. A desoldering hand pump, is also useful for doing this sort of thing. You might look at this one and think, holy crap, that's a bit big. Why is it so big? Like, that's just stupidly big. It actually works really well. These are for sale. You can get these from JCar, and you can get spare tips as well. They work really well because they are so big. They do suck in a lot, and they work really well. And it is a single-sided board, so one of these is fine for doing that sort of thing. So that's braid, and that's your solder sucker. Now, obviously, if you're going to be doing a lot of this stuff, which I obviously do, then this is the way to go. This is a professional desoldering gun. It has a heater in this end. It keeps all hot, and then it sucks the solder straight in when you press the button. Holding it in this section here, and then you just take that out, clean it out, put another filter in, chuck it in, and then you can keep going. This is a Hacko FR301. I think there's a 302 as well. This one's really good. You've got temperature settings at the bottom. You've got obviously the vacuum on off. This bit comes off for cleaning. You can change tips if you want. I just keep the same tip. Works really well. Doesn't get clogged up. I've yet to find any problems with it. This one that I've got here, you're probably wondering, this one's actually plugged into a step-down transformer. This is the Japanese version. The Japanese one is a lot cheaper than the 240 volt Australian / the UK / whatever countries use 240. I'm not sure why that is, but this is what I'll be using for today. Works really well. It just works. Like, it works really well. Like, any Hacko stuff works well, but this guy works really well. So I'll just put him back up on his holder. There we go. Now, Not always when I do a chassis, but I normally like to start on the right and move my way across to left, or start at the AC input section and then work my way down. But you can do either. It's just personal preference. So we've got the main cap here, main power cap. You can see they've glued it down. I'm not sure if you can actually see that in the video or not. And you can see that the negative stripe is on the outside. Now, this is another problem, is because you've got this webbing underneath, it can make it hard to get to some of the solder points, and this one is being bridged over, so I need to just cut that off so I can get better. Just give it a quick snip. It doesn't hurt anything. The chassis is not, flying around inside the case, so it's not like, it has to be braced hugely. Now, there's a fair bit of solder on these, so I will use the desoldering gun, and that should remove most of it. So yeah, so just place the desoldering gun, or whatever tool you're using, and suck the solder up. Now, the other problem you can also have is a lot of chassis will have a silk screen on the bottom, so you can see where all the caps are meant to be. Some don't, and that's a real pain, because you've got to make sure that you actually desolder the right points to actually take the cap out. So I've just held that cap in, which I like to do when I'm desoldering, just so that I can verify which side it goes around. So I'll just pull that out. So that's negative on the side. Now, this guy is exactly what I don't like. They've marked the positive side of the caps, not the negative side of the cap. So I'll just put some black on here. My little texture will color that in. If you don't have one of them, you can get a black Nico, which I've got a couple. Use that. I just like to mark the negative side just so I'm absolutely sure that's the way it goes around. Some chassis do have the silk screen marked wrong. There's quite a few Cortex that do. Capacitor 523 in a lot of Cortex has the wrong silk screen. So you have to follow what the cap is, not what it says on the actual board. So some boards do have problems like that, and that's the Cortex that does. I've not found any Neneos that do. They seem to be all okay. The other thing you can do is most caps are polarized, because that's how they work, but there are non-polarized or bipolar caps, and you basically see there'll be no stripe. No, it says BP on it, or NP, it'll actually say, but there'll be no stripe for the negative, and no marking for positive either. It's just, wait, let me grab one. Where's one that's fairly large? Yeah, see, I'm not sure if you can actually see that, but it says on this guy, it says BP, because it's a bipolar, and as you can see, there's no negative on it marked at all. It's just the value and the voltage, and that's it. So be careful of these guys. You need to be able to replace them with the correct type. You can't just chuck anything else in there. They need to be bipolar or non-polarized caps, depending on which term you'd like to use. Right, so I've just popped this guy out. Here's a 470 200 volt. Now, I have a lot of caps here. So what have I got here? I've got 470. I've got, this guy's 200. I've got a 250, which is fine. So I'll just grab one of these guys. As you can see, grab one of them. 470, 200. Put him just in over there. Straighten out his legs. Now we know that the negative was the side going out towards, which I marked. So pop him in the hole like that. This guy's going to need a little bit of leg bending. So just hold it there. Turn it over. Leg out there. Leg out there. Alright, grab a soldering iron. The marker over there. Keep things tidy. Grab some solder and solder the cap in. Now, because this is the main voltage cap for the chassis, the holes here are usually quite large. Normally, I'd use a snap-in capacitor, which has a big leg, and it's really easy to put in. They cling in there, and you've got quite a large pin. Let's see if I can. Okay, let's see if I can actually show you this guy here. This is a snap-in. If you have a look, let's see if it could. Yeah, see, I don't think it's going to focus on it really well, but you can see it's got quite large pins on it, so it makes it very easy to solder. Yeah, I didn't think that was going to zoom in onto it, but you can see that the pins are quite pronounced, and they're normally the ones that you use for the main voltage cap in a chassis. So yeah, so that's the snap-in one. Right, now I've done one leg, so now I need to do the other leg. So just solder him in. Make sure there's a fair bit of solder there. These caps are quite big, and they do move around a little bit while you're recapping a chassis, so you don't want to crack any of the soldering joints or anything like that. Once they're back in your machine, obviously they're not bouncing around anyway, so that's all cool. So just let the solder cool down a bit so you don't create any cracking or dry jointing, which we definitely do not want. And then just snip the legs off. So grab your little pair of snippers. This is another J-car item. I think they're made in Italy. Yeah, they're made in Italy. But they're really, really good. They stay sharp for quite a while. Great for getting into little nooks and crannies where you need to cut legs off and all that sort of thing. So there we go. So there's the two legs. And there we have our new solder joint. Not sure how well that's going to look into that. But that's all in, she's in. So now flip it back over. Now what I like to do when I'm recapping a chassis, or actually when I'm recapping anything, I like to get a Nico. I normally use green, but you can use any other color, it doesn't matter. And what I'd like to do is just paint the top of them. That way, whenever I look at this chassis in the future, I'll know, I can just look at it and go, oh yeah, she's been recapped, because everything's all green. Plus I can tell anybody else who's non-technical, just open up the cabinet and tell me if the caps are colored in. If they're colored in, then it's been recapped. If they're not, then it needs doing. You should really recap a chassis, especially considering most of these are like 20, 30 years old. They've never had a service. They've never been recapped. It really does need to be done. Some people say no, you shouldn't bother, or you should only do partial recaps. I don't see the point. Caps are not that expensive. I have a lot of caps here because I need to be able to grab a chassis out of a machine, chuck it on the bench, recap it all, chuck it back in the machine and get everything going again. So it's very important to have caps. And later on I'll grab my phone and I'll actually just show you a quick shot of all the caps that I do have, just to show you how many I have. Most of these caps, you can get some from J-Car. I personally recommend Panasonic caps on eBay. The biggest problem with J-Car's ones are okay, but they don't go up to too high voltage, so you're going to get stuck no matter what you're going to do, because there are a lot of caps in chassis that are, above 63 volts, and I'm pretty sure J-Car stops at around 63 to 100. They definitely don't have any high stuff like that. So I order mine through generally Farnell or Element 14, as their new name is called. If I don't have anything, I'll order it through them. Otherwise, I try to use eBay sellers. Generally somebody reliable. I've got a couple that I use, and they're really, really good. Most of them are in the UK, and they send them across, so it doesn't cost that much, because caps don't weigh a lot, which is really, really handy. Right, so we've done that cap, coloured him in. We know that the markings on the board are for the positive side, not the negative, which is really, really stupid. I don't know why people do it. It's usually always the negative side. Probably 90% of boards or 95% of boards, it's always the negative side that needs doing. Right, so let's get on to the next cap. I'm just going to show you a couple of caps. I'm not going to bore you doing a whole video of just doing caps, because that would be really, really boring. Right, so we got this guy in here. You can see underneath the silk screens there, which is good. So we put our desoldering gun on it. more. That's good. She's loose. So I just hold that in there. That way when you pop her out... Crikey. They've used glue. I hate it when they do that. There are quite a few glues that are used to hold caps down on PCBs and stuff. The biggest problem with it, some of them, they actually go conductive, which is a really, really big no-no. So I'm just going to scratch some of this stuff out and then give it a quick clean. The other problem with this stuff is sometimes it goes acidic. It's not neutral cure, and that can eat into the caps, legs, and all sorts of stuff like that. Right, so that's scratched out. There it is there, sits all over my bench now. Get rid of all that. Get out a cotton bud, give it a clean. Grab a cotton bud. Some IPA alcohol. If you don't have any IPA alcohol or rubbing alcohol, you can use metho. Metho will work, but IPA is really what you want to use. It's a lot better. So there we go. So I've just cleaned that guy up. Don't know if you can see that, but yeah, you can see all the dirt, plus a little bit of flux as well. So I'll just give it a little bit more, just so I know I've got rid of all of that. So that's all good. That's all nice and clean now. Rightio. Now, this guy is a 100 UF 160 volt. So I will probably have some of those. So let's go and have a look. 100, 160, 100, 160. I've got fat caps and I've got thins. Which one do I need? I need a thin. Alright, so that's one of these guys. Sometimes with some chassis, sizing of the caps can be a real pain in the ass. Some of them need to be thinner and taller, and not fat and short. So that's another pitfall to look out for. With caps, just in case I haven't said, I always use 105 degree caps or 125, depending on what I can get my hands on. This guy here is an 85 degree, so as you can see, these guys will last a lot longer. Right, let's chuck him over there, grab this little guy. Remembering that the marking is on the positive side. So I'll drop that guy in. Alright, drop him in there. Get the legs out. Make sure I'm not squishing anything. Okay. Now solder the legs in. That's one side. That's the other side. Just let them cool down so they don't crack. Just cut the legs off, the excess. And that's it, it's another one done. Now I'll do one more, and then that should be it for this video. Obviously I've got to recap the whole thing here, so that will take time. Now, as I said, I colour them in. So that's a new one in, so just colour him in. I just use green. You can use any other colour. It's just handy for that. Right, that one's in. Now there's one over here, just behind it. I think it's just there. But you can see how easy using. Okay, that's not so good. Okay. Well, no wonder this cap's got some issues. Aha! Here we go. Not sure if you can see this. Now, let's see if I can show you. Come on. Come on. No, it's not gonna. The actual cap has leaked and actually eaten its leg away. So this cap was doing nothing, only one leg was in there and the other one was just cut off from where it, the corrosion had eaten into it. So that's another reason for doing recaps, obviously, is leaking caps. I've mentioned that quite a few times about the PGM motherboards having leaking caps, but other stuff does it as well. I found heaps of electronics. They got caps that either pop their tops or leaked out the bottom, and replace the caps, and then she works again. So recapping is very, very important. Right, so she's a 22-160. 22-160, which is one of these guys. So we've got him. Now, because this one has leaked out the bottom, I'm going to give the board a quick clean. So I don't have any of that contamination on the board. Just give it a good clean. Always handy to have cotton buds on your workbench. Work good for cleaning all sorts of things, tracks on PCBs, repairs, that sort of thing. Cleaning carts for your Neo Geo or your PGM or whatever cartridge-based system that you're talking about. Right, so that's cleaned up. Now we know the negative side is not marked. It's the positive side on these guys. So we put that through there. Bend the legs. Right, she's in, legs are bent. Grab a soldering iron. Grab some solder. And solder away. There we go. Just let it cool down. Oh, I think I've got a splinter in my finger. Oh, that's no good. Doesn't take a lot of metal to push into the skin and cause a metal splinter. Alright, so that should have cooled down enough. Cut the legs off. Got more of the glues come off. Just put that off the table, get rid of that. Yeah, I'm not a fan of these glues. Especially since some of them, go acidic, and some of them go conductive, which is two things you really don't want around any electronics. Right, so that cap's in. Paint him on. There we go. All good. Well, that's it, guys. I know it's only 3 caps, but you just repeat the process all the way through. But yeah, very, very important. Check which side of the caps is marked, whether it's the positive side like this chassis or the negative side, which is more common. You'll also find on most caps the long leg is the positive leg. That one's not so good to show. But yeah, that's another way if you're unsure. You can just look at which leg is the longest, and that'll be the positive one. Obviously with the negative stripe, you know which side's negative anyway, but just in case you're wondering why one side leg's longer than the other, that's why. So yeah, so check which side is positive, which side is negative on the caps. Check them before you remove the cap, or when you're removing the cap, just hold the cap in there, desolder the bottom, and then as you take it out, check to see what its orientation is. Some silk screens are wrong, as I said at the start of this video, the Cortex, which I mentioned. So yeah, just be really, really careful of that. And then the other thing is the bipolar caps or non-polarized caps, depending on how you want to talk about. They're basically the same thing. And just, yeah, keep an eye out for those guys as well. So that's it, guys. I hope you found that interesting and helpful. If you need any other videos or got any comments, send me an email, visit my website. It's all good, guys. Okay,